I'm surprised that I'm actually not doing this show with you today with a stiff neck because of how much I was turning around like this and that with my bar on Sunday, watching the end of the games. It was that amazing.
No, you're not seeing Double Vision. My name is Zain Bando. He's Johnny Montalbano. This is ETB Sports episode 289. We're back. It is a bit of a later show this week with a few small changes, but overall it should be a good show with a lot of exciting football topics and so much more. Johnny, how are you today, and how's your week so far?
Hey, Zan, I'm doing great. It's great to be on with you. Obviously, under some very tough circumstances, obviously, as we do this show, our thoughts and prayers are with your co-host and our buddy, Nick Morgasen. I know it's been a tough last week for him, so I'm happy, though, to fill in for his shoes and put forth a good show. Yeah, I'm doing well, Zan. It's crazy that it's already coming up on the end of September, coming up to week 4 of the NFL, week 5 of college. You know, I say this every week. I say this every year. Goes by quicker and quicker every single year. I mean, before you know it, the holidays will be here. I'm not trying to rush it. It's happening on its own. But I'm excited to talk to you about that and so much more here today.
Yeah, very, 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 very well said. And obviously our thoughts and prayers are with him as well. So very, very, very well said that you added that. It should be a good show. The fall calendar is going to move by very, very quickly before you know it. But let's just take care of a few orders of business before we get started. So please be sure to like and subscribe. Very important that you do so, as we just surpassed the 1,000 subscriber mark not too long ago. In order to do that, you can go to youtube.com/ETB Network. That's where you can find all of our video-based content, whether you like this show, whether you like my show, being those breakdowns, episode 61 drops later this week. So you want to make sure to check that out. And of course, for those of you who can't watch us, please be sure to listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. And as you guys know, you can follow the show across social media. It's for those of you on the video-only side, it's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So it would be very, very much appreciated if on all social media platforms you guys gave all of the respective accounts a follow. It would be very, very much appreciated. That way we can keep bringing more content and keep bringing you guys newer and fresher ideas as we try to continue to evolve as we can, just with all of the new things that we have going on. And then, of course, stay tuned for a message later on in the show from our friends over at Playback. So now that we're finally into the beginning of the show, it would be a disservice if we did not begin by talking about the crazy week that was week 3 in the National Football League. Because, Johnny, I think we had a lot of parity. I think we had a lot of teams that we expected to win that did. There were a couple of surprising upsets in a few games that we thought were going to go one way, but in a different way. What were your overall takeaways on week 3 in the NFL before we get started? And how do you feel about the season so far?
Well, I would say this, as somebody who I went out after I worked Sunday morning, went to my favorite bar and stayed there for about 8 hours and pretty much watched every game up until the Sunday nighter. And I'll tell you what, it was a pretty epic Sunday, Zan. I mean, here's a great nugget from the Elias Sports Bureau. Sunday featured 7 games in which the game-winning score came within the final 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, which is the most such games in a single day since the 1970 merger. And I mean, when I look at week 3 as a whole, I think, long story short to start, I think it just proves how much we don't know about the NFL. Because,
I think so too.
I mean, if you would have told me that, I mean, take it from the top, that the Panthers would have shut out the Falcons, I would have thought you were crazy. And they put up 30. If you would have told me that the Browns would have came back and beat the Packers when the Packers looked like they were the better team for about 50 minutes in that game, I would have said you're crazy. And then if you would have told me that the Vikings would have put up 48 points, I would have said you're crazy. And gosh, I mean, I could just keep going on and on, Zan. I mean, the way that the Rams-Eagles game finished, where the Eagles were down by 19, came back, took the lead, and then you have that, and then the Rams are going in for a game-winning field goal, and it gets blocked and run back, which I know might anger or cheer some bettors, depending on what side you had in that one. And gosh, I mean, there's so much more. I mean, obviously, we could talk about the Jet-Buck game. We could talk about Daniel Jones going to 3 and the Colts going to 3-0, which might be the biggest and best story of the league so far.
I think so too. I think I mean it's funny you mentioned that because I think Daniel Jones has finally found a system that works for him, and it's clear that the Colts are putting his trust in him, and it's also clear that unfortunately, as much as I loved him coming out of college, maybe Anthony Richardson needs to start thinking about looking for a new team because it seems that the way that Daniel Jones is playing, he's not going to give up that QB1 spot anytime soon. And for anyone that's been looking forward to watching Richardson play while fully healthy, I think those days, at least for now, are more than likely numbered, unfortunately.
Yeah, actually, and let's talk about Jones for a second here because, of course, as a Giants fan, a lot of the talk here this week, well, not only is the way that we're playing, but is about Daniel Jones. And I think the way you look at Jones is I don't actually really think of it as much of a surprise. I look at him and the success that he's having with the Colts so far is similar to the success that he had with the Giants the year that he took him back to the playoffs back in 2022. He's got a very good offensive line. The offensive line was very good for him when the Giants made the playoffs in 22. The running back play has been great with Jonathan Taylor for him now, and Saquon was great the year that the Giants made the playoffs. And he's got good weapons to throw to, whether it's Tyler Warren, the tight end, the rookie tight end out of Penn State. He's got Pittman. I mean, he's got some guys there. So, and the defense is playing well. They're definitely exceeding my expectations. I went into the season thinking that was going to be the biggest quarterback mess of any team in the league, and here they are now 3-0. And I don't know if this is really a fluke. I don't know if they can keep this going, but it's been a remarkable start.
Yeah, it's been a remarkable start for sure. And speaking of whether or not they can keep this going, just not looking too far ahead, but still looking ahead here just a little bit. I think they have some winnable games coming up. So obviously, we'll get into this later on this week when all of us record football forecasts. But this week, obviously, the Colts traveled to LA to take on the Rams. Then the following week, they host the Las Vegas Raiders team, where we don't we quite know where they're at, but it seems like they're on the level of regression. Then they host a tough Arizona Cardinals team. That's not going to be easy. And then the following week, now we're into mid-October at this point, they host probably the hottest team in the AFC in the Los Angeles Chargers. And to close out the month of October, they have a divisional opponent in the Tennessee Titans. And given what they just did this past week, I think they're going to eventually, by that point in the year, if they keep this up, they'll probably have a comfortable lead in the AFC South to where maybe by the second or third week in November, there's already talks of, how many more weeks is it going to be until the Colts be one of the first AFC teams to clinch a playoff spot? So I think pretty much the season is right there in front of them. I mean, in a few games that you thought might be tough games, maybe aren't as daunting. Like I don't know. I feel like even if you go deeper into the month of November, there's a ton of winnable games even in November as well. So I think anybody that has the over total for the Colts is probably feeling really good. And just given the teams I just rattled off, I think there's definitely a couple of wins there for sure. And I think something that I didn't fully mention as I was going through that is a bunch of those games are home games. More specifically, 3 of them out of the ones I just mentioned are at home. So I think Lucas Oil Stadium, if they keep this up, it's going to be one of the toughest places to play, not just in the AFC, but the entire NFL. And I think they're 100% one of the biggest surprise teams in all of football, and I don't think it's even close. So,
surprise in terms of the success so far. And, what they've also done here is they've given themselves a little bit of a leash where if they do struggle across, because now you've got 2 teams in that division that are off to an 0-3 start, and they face each other on Sunday. That's, of course, the Texans and the Titans. And the Jaguars are still a real wild card in all this. They're 2-1, but they've looked good at times, and they've also had some moments that have not looked good. So they're a true wild card in all this as well. So it's definitely looking favorable right now. I mean, there's a possibility they could put a 4-game lead on either the Texans or the Titans. If you're the Texans, I said I still had the Texans as making a very deep run this year, and they still could do that. I think they were going to get off to a slow start this year because they're still missing Joe Mixon, who's obviously out for the first 4 games. Their defense has still played great, but their offense has just been a major bust so far through 3 weeks. Eventually, at some point, they're going to have to get that going. And
I agree. Yep.
I think if they can't get going on Sunday, that's where I would really like ring the alarm bells. I mean, if you can't get it going against a Titans team that I know has looked okay. I mean, obviously 0-3 is 0-3, but they've had some signs this year. But I mean, if you can't get your offense going against the Titans, I mean, it's almost now or never. I mean, we talked about how only one team since 2000 has started 0-3 and made the playoffs, and I still think the Texans can turn this around, but the time is running out. I mean, let's say that imagine if the Colts go into LA on Sunday, SoFi Stadium, and they pull off another win, go to 4-0, and and you look at the rest of the league. If the Jaguars lose and everybody else loses, I mean, the Colts are going to start running things away, and before you even turn the page to October.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I think you're right. I think we're only about a week and a half or so away from really determining whether that might happen. So that's good as well. What I want to briefly discuss, though, is I don't understand another team that I don't get is the Atlanta Falcons. You go from winning in a hostile environment on Sunday Night Football to putting up 0 points rather against a team that I think a lot of people still think hasn't reached its full potential in the Carolina Panthers. I'm just curious because it seems to me like from your perspective, you've been kind of hit or miss on overall on how this NFC South is gonna shake out. Do you think this is a fluke from Atlanta, or do you think this is a sign of things to come to where maybe it's just going to be Tampa Bay and everybody else? Because to me, that's very quickly what it seems to be like. And unfortunately, this seems to me like one of the most lopsided divisions in all of football, unless something drastically changes. What do you think?
Can't figure out the Falcons. I really can't. You know, even talking from a fantasy perspective, I had Joe Burrow as my starter, and I had to put him on reserve, obviously, because he's out for 3 months. And I ended up picking up Penix, thinking that he could build off of what he did last week, actually in week 2 against the Falcons, especially against a Panthers team that, you know, defensively had not been great at all this year. And they end up getting a pick 6 off of him. And, you know, it's been so strange because we've talked for years about how the Falcons have the weapons on offense. I mean, Bijan Robinson, great running back, putting up great numbers, but they have Drake London. They've got some other guys there too on the receiving side. And Penix, I felt like to start his young career, he's been unlucky in some moments because he's lost.
Has. I agree with that.
If you think about it, he had 3 games in 3 starts. Really, he had lost 2 in overtime. If you remember the game to start the year against the Bucks, their kicker Koo, who they ended up cutting, misses 2 big field goals. And if that wasn't crazy enough, so we find out just before we started the show that they fired wide receiver coach Ike Hilliard, and TJ Yates, who's the passing game coordinator, is receiving coaching duties as well. So you're already making changes after 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's usually a pretty bad sign already.
And I know the slate for week 4 on paper is not that attractive. Most of the games are not that great, but they've got one of the more intriguing games on Sunday against the Washington Commanders at home. And if you look at the Commanders, who Jaden Daniels does not play with the knee sprain on Sunday, and Marcus Mariota goes in there, and I felt like it was not that much of a drop off.
No, it wasn't.
Some people think going from Daniels to Mariota, but I mean, what they were able to do up against that Raider defense was absolutely electric. And the Commanders, obviously, we know how they did last year, trying to get back to that promised land. We don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to be back out there for Sunday. It may not matter. Mariota knows the Falcons he used to play for them, so that's a pretty important game. And yeah, you know, again, another situation where you look at the division. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love the Bucks was because of that division. You know, you've got 2 of the arguably worst teams in the league, in the Panthers and the Saints. You have the Falcons, who are okay. I don't think they're that great, but I don't think they're among the worst. So you have that. But yeah, I mean, any talk about the Falcons in the playoffs right here, they've got to. They're such a strange team, and yeah, I would not have had on my bingo card 30-0. I thought maybe would have been a shot that the Panthers could have kept it a little bit close, being their first home game of the year. And if you saw second half of last year, their games at home were actually were quite competitive.
They were.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're looking at it from a betting perspective. But not in my wildest dreams would I have thought a 30-0 final. But again, like I said at the start, the more that we think we know, the less that we know when it comes to the league.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the more kind of sticking with the more we know, the less we know type of theme here. There were a couple of other games that literally defined it, and one of them was the Green Bay Packers going into Cleveland, and everybody thinking this was going to be a game that the Packers were going to win going away, and the Browns somehow pull off, to me, already the biggest upset, at least early on in the NFL season so far. I mean, there's not much more to say other than the fact that I think the Packers took their foot off the gas and I think just left seriously too much time for Cleveland to come back. I mean, it was just too many miscues down the stretch. And just to me, with no dog in the fight at all other than my pick, which ended up being wrong. It was wrong for most of us. And I'm so lucky that in my literal survivor, in my ESPN survivor, spoiler alert, I'm still alive in that because I made a last minute decision on Thursday to switch my pick from the Packers to the Bucks. Hence why I'm still alive in that.
Man, oh wow!
No, I know. I was freaking out. I was freaking out during that one too. Don't worry. Don't worry. But I mean, just to kind of combine both of those. I mean, when do you see two finishes in a 15 minutes? It's electric because those two. I couldn't believe it. And, and that was even before we could even get to the Eagles-Rams situation because they were all happening within 10 to 15 minutes of each other, each one. So it was kind of a nutty end to the 1 p.m. Eastern slate.
I'm surprised that I'm actually not doing this show with you today with a stiff neck because of how much I was turning around like this and that with my bar on Sunday, watching the end of the games. It was that amazing. I mean, let me see how I can take these in order here. Let me start with the Packer-Brown game for a second. So I actually felt like the Browns were actually going to keep it close because it was, the first time that the Packers went on the road, their first two wins, not taking anything away, but they were at home against defenses that were not the best in the league. The Browns defense is always going to keep them in games. And that's actually what happened because the Packers never really were able to take off on Sunday. They only got it to 10-0. And the big point in that game was the Jordan Love interception. And he had gone, 8 straight games dating back to last season without a pick. And the interception he threw was massive. And it allowed the Browns to go back down because the way that game was shaping out from the Browns side, especially on the offense, is I felt like we could have came in here today if the Browns would have lost that game 10-0, and I think we would have been talking about the possibility about them making a quarterback switch because Joe Flacco had been awful to start the year. And I think, when you're 41 years old and you're trying to run it back with somebody who gave you magic 2 years ago, albeit with a much different team and system, but he goes there, and the Browns defense is what kept them in that game. Love makes a critical throws a critical interception, allows the Browns to go down and score, then kick a field goal tied, and then they're able to have time and go back down the field and kick the game winner at the end. So, and you remember the first week against the Bengals, their special teams were horrific.
Horrific, absolutely terrible. They're the reason why they lost. They should have won the game. They only lost by 1 point.
And, when you play a 17-game season, even the best teams are going to have that one game every year where you say, how do they lose this game? The Ravens had that already against the Bills, after, especially the way that game finished. We saw the Packers had it here. I think every team is going to go through that. Maybe the Eagles might go through it at some point this year. I just think every team's going to have that. And We'll see how both of them rebound. Now, the Packers will face the Cowboys, the Micah Parsons revenge game on Sunday Night Football. and the Browns go to Detroit, where, we'll see. We're doing this before the Monday night game. We'll see what happens there. But when the Lions play home, they love to put up points, and I love to see what happens with that defense. I think that's a tall order for that defense to keep up with that offense. Then you get to the Jet-Buccaneer game. Whew, boy. 23-6, the Bucs are leading in the fourth quarter. Tyrod Taylor subbing for Justin Fields, can't do anything really. And
were you even watching that game at that point, or were you watching other games? Because my eyes were kind of moving around. I had red zone on one screen, and then for me, just because my viewing experience is different than yours, on my Sunday ticket, I can do 4 games at once. So I was swapping games in and out for the fourth game and moving the boxes around based on what the implications were before I settled on 4 that I was comfortable with. So it kind of just worked out. But I felt like I know you probably didn't see, but I felt like Red Zone did a tremendous job trying to give you as much as possible of those 3 finishes, because as we just alluded to a few minutes ago, they all happened so quickly, and they all happened one right after the other, to where if you missed one, it wasn't really a surprise because of everything else that was going on. So
yeah, it wasn't on the top of the list of the Jet-Buck game, but this is the first year I'm doing fantasy, and I had a couple of Bucs players on one of my teams. I have Chase McLaughlin, the kicker, who had a great day outside of that one block.
I have him. I have him too in a couple as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I have Mike Evans, and Mike Evans ends up getting hurt with the hamstring injury, which I think can be kind of a big deal for the Tampa. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I didn't really start paying attention to it until later on, when all the other games had either been out of reach or finished, because that one was going a little bit longer. And just how the Jets were able to come back, they had nothing on offense for about 3.5 quarters. Then they start getting a little bit of a rally together. They start getting to the Bucs. You start to see a little bit of the tide turning. And the real funny thing was, even when the Jets blocked that kick and run it back, great job by Will McDonald, even when they run that back and they go in and take the lead, you still left a lot of time for Baker and the Bucs. And I'm sure a lot of Jet fans, that I've seen it on social media already since the game ended, they all felt like they weren't going to win that game. And it was really just – but you know what it also spoke to? Baker Mayfield, 3 game-winning drives in the first 3 weeks of the year.
Unbelievable.
It really is.
And each one has been more spectacular than the one before it.
For sure. And I tell you what, you were with me. One of my bold takes this year was I thought Baker Mayfield was going to be a serious candidate for MVP. And right now, he's got to be. I think he's got to be. Yeah, and I know we're only 3 weeks in, and a lot can change, and you're gonna see this as the year goes on. But Baker Mayfield's got to be in play for MVP right now. The way this has been through 3 weeks. I mean, is he putting up the most outstanding numbers? No, but he's putting up the numbers in the most important times of the game too. And the one thing the Bucs had not been able to do I believe it's their 5th straight year. They started 2-0. They never got to 3-0. And so they get to 3-0.
Yeah, it's the first time that they're 3-0 since 2005.
And that sets up a great matchup with the Eagles, who we'll talk about in just a second, next Sunday. 3-0 versus 3-0 down there in Tampa. It's going to be a must-see game next Sunday. But what a win for the Bucs, and more devastation from the Jets side. I mean, it's the same old story with them. It doesn't matter what you do or stuff, but people are like going crazy about it. Just one word about the Jets really quick. This happens a lot when you're among the worst teams in the league year after year, but you're not the worst team in the league for one of those years. So you're not able to draft that top-notch quarterback that you want. When that happens, there's 2 moments I felt like the Jets have still never recovered from. And that was the Victor Cruz 99-yard touchdown catch and run Christmas Eve 2011. And I felt like they've still also not recovered from the week that they beat the Rams. Meaningless win because it cost them a shot at Trevor Lawrence. Now, I don't know if Trevor Lawrence in that system is the Trevor Lawrence that he was down in Jacksonville his first year, 2 years, but it costs you a shot at getting him. And you end up taking Zach Wilson, and we all know what's happened there since. But boy, but then you get to the, like you said, the Ram Eagle game, which was mostly Rams for about the first 2.5 quarters, and the Eagles, who had not done much on offense so far this season, all of a sudden find another gear. Jalen Hurts does it with his arm and his legs. And of course, one of the other things we'll talk about too is the tush push with them. It happened a couple of more times. But, great teams, that's now 19 out of 20 games. That's 19 wins in the last 20 games for the Eagles. And they find all sorts of ways to do it. I can't stand it. I respect the heck out of it, though. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable story for sure. And, I've watched the Eagles for a long time. That's one of those wins where I obviously I don't care for them from an allegiance standpoint, but that's one of those wins now from an epic classic standpoint that I probably won't forget for a very long time. That was a huge win, and I'm sure that's a game that the Rams would love to have back. I even saw Rams fans say it's the worst choke they've seen from the Rams in 10 to 15 years, dating back to their old LA stint from a very, very long time ago. So it just goes to show you kind of the mood the Rams fan base is in, but the Eagles could not have had a more electric start to the season. And if there was any doubt that the Eagles are still one of the classes of the NFC, I think this comeback on Sunday proved that and then some. And also, just one quick comment because it's related to the NFC East, and that also goes to the contrast point. I'm sure the Dallas Cowboys are still wishing that they had Micah Parsons right now because that defense was torched by Caleb Williams on Sunday. Absolutely torched.
Yeah, no, you must have loved that. I thought they
did.
were, and not only just that though, but even on the offensive side, they don't do much offensively against the Bears defense. And you guys are missing a lot defensively, especially especially in the secondary. And then CeeDee Lamb gets hurt. They reported that it's a high ankle sprain, so he might be out a few weeks. The Cowboys came into the season, I believe, I thought the Cowboys came into the season at best average, and now you're missing weapons. Now you're missing weapons on both sides of the ball. You're not playing great, especially on defense. I mean, you're looking awful on defense through 3 weeks. I mean, I don't even think Michael Parsons could have saved this, and they're also suffering injuries too. Yeah, this is really bad. That should be one of the big things we're talking about here is how bad the Cowboy defense has been through 3 weeks. But a great win for your Bears. Caleb Williams looked great no matter what the situation is. It's, I think, mentally for him and for Ben Johnson, much needed win for them before they go out and play the Raiders on Sunday. It was good to get that first win. You needed that, especially the deflating first game, which I think also impacted their second game against the Lions.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think the confidence is only going to continue to build, and I think they're catching the Raiders at the right time because, as we alluded to a little bit earlier in the show, we don't quite know where this Raiders team is after a huge week 1 win and then 2 kind of letdown performances in weeks 2 and week 3. Before we put a bow on week 3, I just wanted to briefly get your overall grade for the week before we preview the Thursday night NFC West showdown between Arizona and Seattle.
So as a whole, week 3,
yep,
A+. It was. I mean, just the games. I mean, even the Thursday game was actually a little bit of a surprise because the Bills did not totally blow out the Dolphins, but they still put up 31 against them. But just the finishes that we had on Sunday, the play all around. I mean, even in the late window, some of the games we didn't even get to. Chargers getting past the Broncos last second. The 49ers beating the Cardinals the way they did. Very costly win for them. But nevertheless, you talk about a team that's always banged up with injuries, and Kyle Shanahan's got the Niners at 3-0, and Brock Purdy could possibly be back on Sunday. Huge deal there. But just the finishes overall, A+. How I'm feeling is an F, personally, is with my Giants. But as a whole,
for sure.
A fan who sat around for 8 hours at my bar on Sunday, I loved it. Every single minute of it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I'd give it a solid A. I wouldn't go as far to say an A plus. I needed one more exciting game to tip me over the edge, if you will. But I would say a solid A overall. The Bears won this week. The Steelers won this week. I did pretty well straight up. Didn't do as well against the spread, but overall a very, very entertaining week of football.
Hey fans, Novig is here to change the way you play. Available in 35 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and New York, Novig is America's #1 sports prediction market, and it's 10 times more profitable than traditional sports books because there's no house edge. Instead, you're betting directly against other sports fans just like yourself. Novig is also the only free exchange, which means you keep every dollar you win, whether you're putting plays down on the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, college sports, or even UFC and tennis. Novig gives you the power to pick the best odds, or better yet, set your own. Sign up today with the code ETB Network, and you'll get 1,000 Novig coins plus $5 in Novig cash, and special bonus offers like spending $5 and getting $50 back. Novig, where fans play smarter. You must be 21 years or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We're going into our second full week, if you will, at the Novig Sportsbook, and we're going to start with Thursday Night Football. Oh, the Novig line is Seattle -1.5 against the Arizona Cardinals with the over/under at 42.5. I mean, what is your way too early Wednesday evening forecast of this game, as this line has shifted in days, both on the spread and on the over/under total?
Yeah. So this is a tough one, and it's an important one for both teams. I actually do like the Seahawks to win this one. The Cardinals, they haven't really been great offensively through the first 3 weeks. Now, I have a few of the guys in fantasy. Like, I have Trey McBride, who I love and who puts up great numbers for me every week. But the Cardinals have not put up over 300 yards of offense, and they struggled against that 49er defense last week. Big injury for them also, by the way, in week 3 was James Conner. That's a big blow for their running attack.
Huge blow, and a very, very devastating injury on top of it. A very uncomfortable injury to watch, too.
Now, they do have a decent backup guy there in Trey Benson, who was great in his rookie season, so he can step in and be all right. I mean, I don't think he'll put up the numbers that Conner would put up, but he's still a very solid guy. They have some pieces on offense. The thing that concerns me, though, with the Cardinals is the Seahawks defense has been outstanding so far in the first 3 weeks. And the Cardinal defense is not that great either. It's not that great. It's not a good combination. The Seahawks, you know what? I know it's a short week, but it's a short week for both. But the Seahawks, I think, are running in with a lot of momentum. They put up 31 against the Steelers. They totally dominated the Saints. That game was over in like the first 5 to 10 minutes on Sunday. And Sam Darnold's been playing great. That defense has been outstanding. They've got some weapons on offense. I think this is going to be a tough time for the Cardinals to keep up with them. So I absolutely it's a small number too, which is also very, very favorable. If it stays like this, I will probably play this on Novig before the kickoff on Thursday, and I would take the Seahawks.
Yeah, I would take the Seahawks too, and this will probably be one of my Novig plays of the week as well. I agree with you. I think Seattle's firing on all cylinders. I think Geno Smith is playing really well, and I think the way the defense has been able to wreak havoc, if you will, has been very, very impressive. And I just think this Arizona Cardinals offense is just too slow. I think Kyler Murray is a bit of a shell of his former self. You lose your starting running back, and you mentioned that the backup running back may be okay, but Benson is nowhere near the talent of James Conner. So there's a clear talent gap there, and I just think even though the game is at home for Arizona, to me it doesn't seem like Seattle's been phased, as you alluded to. Them going into Pittsburgh and playing really well there a couple weeks ago. I think they're one of those sleeper teams that might make more noise as the season goes on. And I think this is going to be a solid NFC West win to give them some much needed momentum going into October as the schedule gets a little bit tougher from here on out. But nevertheless, though, it should be a good game. And with you, I love Seattle -1.5, and I hope this line stays because I do think Seattle is going to win the game outright, and I do think it's going to be somewhat of a close game, but I think they pull away late. And Actually, I'm actually not gonna touch the total here. I think it's gonna be more of a lower scoring game. I'm gonna say it's gonna be probably somewhere around the 23-13 range. I just don't really see a whole lot of points scored in this one. What do you think?
I totally agree with you, Zain. I wouldn't touch the total either. I think this I'm more comfortable taking the Seahawks with the spread. And yeah, I actually wouldn't be comfortable. I would bet it up to 2.5 even. I mean, they keep if it stays below under a field goal, I will feel comfortable. If you start going over that field goal, divisional game, it gets to be a little bit on the uncomfortable side. So as of right now, if it's at 1.5, I will definitely play it and take the Seahawks. I wouldn't touch it. I agree with you though. I don't like the total. So I would, but I would lay the Seahawks in this one to start.
Yeah, speaking of football, let's transition from the NFL now to college football. And this one, I can't believe I'm even going to be talking about this, but Illinois was trounced this past Saturday night in what was supposed to be the game of the week on NBC, losing to Indiana 63-10. This game was bad, really, really early on. And from the Illinois side, Fernando Mendoza, only 2 incompletions in this game and 5 touchdowns. This is probably one of the worst Illinois performances I've seen in the last probably 8 or so years. It's easily the worst loss of the Brett Bielema era so far, and this, and even in the days following it, I still can't believe it. And I think this is almost like a changing of the guard in the Big Ten. I think a lot of people were underestimating how good Indiana was going to be this coming year, and with all they had returning, and even with the transfer quarterback. And it's very clear Indiana is definitely in the mix, not to mess around. They should be in the same conversation, with the Penn States, with the Oregons, with the Ohio States, and there's not much more to say other than the fact that this was a complete domination. And I think, unfortunately, it showed the many flaws that people thought that Illinois had going into this year were finally exposed. And unfortunately, this was almost like a prove-it game for Indiana, and they proved it and then some. What did you think of this?
I was shocked. I actually had to do a double take when I saw this score. I didn't watch a lot of this, but I mean, I know you were talking about last week when it came to this one, and yeah, it's a major shocker. I mean, when you think about, I know you guys have been trying to take the next step there with Illinois. Now, does this take them out of the running? What do you think?
It's a very good question, and there are a few ways to quantify this here. So it was obviously Illinois' first loss of the year, but they have a few major tests coming up. Obviously, this week they have USC, which is still ranked. They're off to a really nice 4-0 start. They're sitting at number 25, and then you obviously have, assuming they're still number 1, they have Ohio State coming to Champaign in October. I think if there's 2 games that possibly define the entire season, it's those 2. And unfortunately, I think if we suffer another loss that is in Ohio State, I think the committee is going to win this one heavily. And unfortunately, Illinois, it might be one of those first 4 teams out at the end of the year if Illinois decides to run the table. But I think what I'm more concerned about right now is a really, really depleted offensive line and a really, really banged up secondary. And I'm also just really concerned that if the offensive line is so depleted and the lack of protection on the side of Luke Altmaier, one of the few returning quarterbacks in the Big Ten this season, I just wonder how far this Illinois team can go, because now you're asking it under a lot of pressure to host USC this Saturday on Big Noon Kickoff in front of a national TV audience. And I honestly am not fully sure what to expect. I'm going to be in attendance for that one, but all I know is there really isn't much more margin for error other than what happened this Saturday night. So I think the question in regards to if they're out of the running, I think a lot of those questions are going to be answered by about 4:30 Eastern this coming Saturday, fortunately or unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think it's a very short leash now for Illinois. The interesting test with them facing USC on Saturday is It's like you said, it's an early kickoff, noon Eastern. So you have USC now flying west to Midwest. So that's still though an early start time for them. And it's kind of unusual. Now it didn't really pan out that way last week with Utah, but I mean, it's still something that's got to be considered because these are still college kids and stuff. These aren't pros. I mean, they're not really pros, so they're not used to doing the cross. And especially if this is still technically new for a lot of the former Pac-12 schools that now went to the Big Ten with all this merging and stuff, and they have to fly cross country. And they're trying to avoid this. It seems like a lot that if you go cross country, now this is technically not a cross country trip because it's only 2 time zones, but still, nevertheless, it's still an early start time for a former Pac-12 school. So you wonder maybe if there's a little bit of rust from USC's side, and can Illinois maybe capitalize on that and realize they're probably going to play very angry after being destroyed like they were. The one thing I would watch for in that game would be the start. See if Illinois maybe jumps out to a quick 2-score lead, maybe even a 2-touchdown lead, and try and put the game out early. Of course, I'm looking at it as somebody that wants USC to get some good wins because we need all the help we can get as for my Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But for you, I mean, you got to, like you said, I think the leash, especially with the way the Big Ten is shaping up this year, is very, very thin. And a 53-point loss is not going to really help that cause, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then if you look at it, on the other side, I'm just curious to hear your perspective too, because a lot of people are taking this both ways. Do you think this is the start of something special for Indiana, or do you think this is a sign of there's going to be a week that pops up here in a few weeks where Indiana crashes and burns, and this is going to be the lone high that it has potentially this year? What do you think?
Oh, it's a good question. They're hard to figure out.
I think so too.
I mean, if you look at them now, the thing they've got is they still got their only tough, their real challenges are Oregon and Penn State, and they have to, and both of those games are on the road, which could be a test for them. But that's the thing. I'm not really comfortable with them going on the road to both of those teams.
I would argue you could make the same argument in Johnny this week when they have to go to Iowa City, which is a very tough place to win at.
I agree. You're right. And it could be a little bit of a letdown, maybe riding the high. Now, I know they put up 133 points in the last 136 points in the last 2 games, but
right.
But when you think of Iowa, you don't think of high scoring games.
No, you don't. You think of really low scoring 16-13 defensive slugfest is what you think of.
Right. And I mean, early on, Indiana's laying 7.5, total 48.5, which is kind of high for an Iowa game. But
I think so too.
It would come down to those 2 games for Indiana, going to Oregon and then going to Happy Valley. I'm not confident with them going facing those two matchups.
Yeah, I'm not confident either. And I would argue, and this may be a bit of a harsh take, but I would argue that even if Indiana splits those, the committee may look at those games, and if Indiana underperforms in one of those losses, maybe that hurts its college football playoff chances too. You never know. So,
yes, agree with that.
And moving away from the Big Ten over to the ACC, you want to talk about this Clemson and Dabo Sweeney in free fall mode, losing at home 34-21 to Fran Brown in the Syracuse Orange. My first question is, or I guess my first statement rather, is the downfall of Clemson football needs to be studied, because this was one of those games where you look up at the final score and you go, wow, if you would have told me this 3 weeks ago that Clemson would be in this position, I don't know if I would have believed it. And now you're almost looking at the season going, can this team even remotely make a decent bowl game, given that now it's college football playoff hopes are basically on life support, or in some people's minds, mine included, dead. So this one was one that I couldn't believe. And if you want to talk about a program changing win for a Syracuse Orange program that's still trying to win with a coach that's clearly no nonsense, given what he had his team do 2 weeks ago after an overtime win against UConn, It has to be one of those program turning wins to where maybe if recruits weren't interested in Syracuse, they're definitely interested in Syracuse after last week. That's for sure.
Totally. And, just talking about Clemson for a second, first of all, this final score is it's totally misleading. It wasn't even that close. I watched this game and this was not even close. And let's be honest, Zan, Clemson's had maybe one decent half in 4 games this year.
Oh, for sure.
I know. They kept
in that decent half, just to kind of add on to what you're saying, wasn't even to their fullest potential yet.
Yeah, I mean, so they kept it with LSU to start the year, but after that, Troy dominated that first half against them in their second matchup, and they had to rally just to beat Troy, but they didn't look great there. Obviously, this one we talk about this one, and I mean, even the Georgia Tech game, they didn't play that great against Georgia Tech. I mean, I know they lost at the buzzer, but they didn't play that great either.
No, they didn't.
Kate Klubnik, who a lot of people were very high on this year,
I was too.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, it hasn't panned out.
Yeah, and this is actually really a shocker because he does take advantage of the lesser teams, and he does struggle against the bigger opponents. But the lesser teams are what he's always done against, and he really hasn't done that this year. And yeah, I mean, Clemson really is on life support. I mean, I know they play their next matchups in 2 weeks against North Carolina, but they still got to play. SMU, Duke, they got to go to Florida State. And I'll tell you right now, and I know they're struggling, South Carolina is a spoiler at the end of the year there too. So if they're somehow still alive, if they need a must-win game at the end of the year, South Carolina can make that a game.
Oh, for sure. They might even win, just like they did last year.
Yeah. South Carolina, and I think right now that's where the Gamecocks are going to be right now because their last 2 weeks have not been great at all either. But, and really, when you look at Clemson, I mean, a lot of the talk's been because they haven't really used the transfer portal. Their recruiting has not been as sharp as in years past. I mean, you've obviously been hearing about the stuff from Dabo, what he's been saying post-game about, his job security and stuff. Maybe they need another Tyler and Spartanburg to rally the troops.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like his head isn't fully in it, or he's really focused on potentially retiring because it's clear with what he's been saying. It doesn't seem like he's all in on his teams, maybe as he was, when Trevor Lawrence was the quarterback, or when even Deshaun Watson was the quarterback all those years ago. So I don't know. Oh, as I kind of alluded to, I think Dabo Swinney, unfortunately, is a shell of his former self, and just maybe. And I'm not the biggest. I'm not the biggest ACC locked in follower as I am maybe of the Big Ten coaches, but maybe maybe that the game has possibly passed him by because this 1-3 start, as you probably know, would have been unheard of 5 or 6 years ago, which makes it even more shocking.
Well, when you think about it real quick before we move on here, Zan, the schools like Ohio State, like Georgia and Alabama, like don't even count the transfer portal. When they have their quarterbacks and their top-notch players leave or go pro, they're able to. They don't start over. They just retool. Clemson has never been able to recover from losing Trevor Lawrence to going pro, and even Travis Etienne. DJ Uiagalelei was not great.
No,
he was not great, and he ended up going to 2 other schools. And Clay Klubnik, the jury's still out on him, and a lot of their other guys too. They lose a lot of defensive players to the pros, and they cannot retool them like Georgia does. So yeah, maybe Dabo's like the last of those guys that with pre-transfer portals still there. So we will see. I haven't been high on Clemson. I never even thought that it would stoop down to this.
No, I wouldn't ever thought it would have stooped onto this either. Before we move on to the end of the show, just really quick, given Clemson's 1-3 start, how do you see them faring further on into ACC play, and how do you see them finishing their season overall? Because to me, it's looking very much like an 8-4 season, or even a 7-5 year is really on the table, unless things turn around rather quickly. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think they're running the table. I really don't. As like I said, South Carolina plays them tough every year, and the Gamecocks got, they've got some players on that team. They've got a quarterback in Lenore Sellers, who people are thinking right now could be the top quarterback right now in next year's draft.
I love him. I think he's great. And even though I saw him in person lose, I still think he has a very, very impressive arm. And I think that certainly he should be at the top of multiple NFL teams' draft boards next year, because when he is out there in space, he is extremely, extremely dynamic. He's a good player.
Yeah, he can do it with his arm and his legs, that's for sure. And there was a poll that Pete Thamel threw out, wrote about before the kickoffs on Saturday, and the poll stated that they would take Lenore Sellers as the top pick over guys like Garrett Nussmeier going into next year. Obviously, I pay attention to it a lot living down here in South Carolina. I know they play in Columbia 3 hours west, but Sellers has been great. The whole team, though, it's been a dud the last 2 weeks. I think they kind of overlooked Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's very underrated, and then you cannot be outrushed like 300 to like -7 against Missouri and think you're going to win.
Brutal, absolutely brutal.
So brutal. I was out Saturday night with my band friends, and it's a funny story because one of the members of that band, her son actually plays he's a backup offensive lineman. So obviously, while I'm paying attention to the band on the other side, I got eyes on the right side looking at the game, and they were showing the stat about how Missouri was out rushing them like 300 to -7, and we just looked in disbelief. It was almost amazing they only lost that game by 9 points. But but Gamecock's schedule, Zain, it's torturous. We talk about that in the pros. We talk about it with Florida. The Gamecock schedule is just, oh my gosh. I'm like, if they were actually able to get through this with only 3 losses, I thought it would have been amazing. It's already started with 2, and they still got to play an unbelievable stretch coming up.
Yeah, you've got a loaded Oklahoma team, and following that, you have to host Alabama. That's not easy. Shoot, 4 out of their next 5 games are all heavyweight slugfest.
Yeah, and they've played a lot of home games early. Remember, they started the year neutral site in Atlanta, but that was considered a home game, and they had 2 more home games after that. So they've already had a bunch of home games early to start this year, so they'll have some tests on the road, including at LSU as well.
Do you think at the very least that South Carolina should be able to beat Kentucky on Saturday?
They should, but they should be able to beat Kentucky, yes. Will they? We'll find out.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. And just really quick, before we wrap up the show, we're going to take a quick time out to hear a message from our friends over at Playback, and then after that, we'll get back to the end of the show.
Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show.
All right, now that that's out of the way, we're going to move over to some baseball news now, and it's a pretty big one. Dodgers pitcher Clayton Kershaw announced recently that he plans to retire at the end of the season, ending a legendary stretch. I guess you could say as an LA icon of sorts. So when you first saw this news, what was your initial reaction? Because my initial reaction was that I feel like an era of baseball is now officially gone, which is really, really disappointing.
That's exactly what I had. If you think about him, his numbers, like what he's done his career. First off, 18 seasons all with the same team. How many guys do you see like that? The numbers that he put up in his career have been amazing. If you just look at his career as a whole, Zain, he MVP in NL MVP in 2014, 3-time Cy Young, 11-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, 5-time ERA title, 2011 Triple Crown winner. I'll tell you right now, I don't see any pitcher in baseball right at this moment that's going to come close to echoing what Kershaw did, and to do it for one team as well is remarkable.
Yeah, that's very great that you say that, because I personally think Clayton Kershaw is one of the last pitchers of a dying era. It's as simple. It's as simple as that. You don't really see these mainstay players stick around at the same team, just given how fluid all of these contracts were. So for him to stay as loyal as he did, I think it truly is an end of an era in Dodger baseball. That even though they might still be very competitive over the next few years, I mean, his shoes are going to be very, very difficult to replace, and I think we're really going to know how big this loss is, by the time not just next season rolls around, but 2027, even 2028. Just how they're going to rebuild at that position, I think is going to be very, very interesting.
Well, I think they've got a lot of pieces for the rotation, but I'm thinking as a whole for the sport, that there is no guy out there right now like Kershaw, like what he was able to do in the prime of his career. It's still, I know this guy is also a great start. Paul Skeens there in Pittsburgh. It's still way too early to see if he's going to be able to do this year in and year out. And the way that
I agree, and it's way too early to see, even if he is a long-term answer in Pittsburgh too. You never know. You never know what might happen market-wise and all that too. So
just think that there were actually rumors that teams were actually trying to trade for him or looking to deal into acquiring him at the deadline this past year. If that's any indication, but I mean, the numbers that Kershaw put up were outstanding. And what really also took him over the top too was winning the World Series. Because, if there was one flaw in Kershaw's resume, in Kershaw's career, it's the fact that he struggled in the postseason. But the fact that he got a couple of World Series titles, even if one of them was in a shortened COVID year, look, I mean, it is what it is. But it's amazing. And I think we really need to cherish this. Because I don't think there's anybody out there right now, and I don't know if there will be any. The way that baseball is nowadays, I don't know if we've got another Clayton Kershaw in the game right now.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And again, kind of going back to my era's point, I think it's going to be very difficult to see a repeat of this. It's just given the simple fact that it's just hard to stand one team every single year for an entire career. So yeah, I could totally see that.
Just two things. Can I say two things real quick? Sure. Yeah, just real quick before we move on. I know somebody might comment on this. The only other pitcher right now that is still out there that is in Kershaw's era that's still out there is Verlander. But if you look at Verlander towards the tail end of his career, he's been bouncing around from team to team. To the Mets, and then went back to the Astros. And then he's into the Giants now. So there's that.
Yeah, I was going to say he's been bouncing around from team to team, but also his arm just wasn't what it used to be 5, 6, even 7 years ago. So
yeah, and also, and I know this is a crazy rant, but I have to say this. How is his last start not on regular TV?
I don't know.
I know it was on Apple TV. It was scheduled like that, but I mean, it's Clayton Kershaw. We couldn't put this game on regular TV for Dodger fans, and forget just baseball fans. How about Dodger fans? Like how is this game on Apple TV? They couldn't make a last-second switch and maybe simulcast it if you don't get Apple TV. That you couldn't get it on the regular broadcast channels.
Well said.
I mean, that's a myriad of problems with baseball. Look, enjoy baseball, because I'll tell you right now, at the end of next year, there's going to be a lockout. It's not, and it won't be if there's a lockout or when there's a lockout. It's how long a lockout's going to last. So
yeah, definitely, he seems that way. And one more brief comment on that whole Apple TV thing. An Apple TV notification was how I found out that Clayton Kershaw was going to be retiring at the end of the year. And so that's why I found out. It wasn't a general tweet. It wasn't anything. It was a legitimate Apple TV notification telling me that Clayton Kershaw was going to retire at the end of the year. Where were you when you found out that when you found out that this announcement had occurred?
I was making dinner because it was about four-ish on Thursday that this came out. So yeah, I was actually in my kitchen right behind me making dinner, and I saw that come across. And Kershaw had said that this was in the works for a while, and he had been hanging on the last year or two, taking like 1-year deals. So I thought it was pretty cool though that he did it now and not like announce at the beginning of the season that this is going to be his final year, because he's not that kind of guy. So that was pretty special. And of course, we'll see. He will be in Cooperstown. And of course, the Dodgers will definitely retire his number. So this won't be the end of him. And, I don't know if he has any plans to do any coaching or broadcasting. We'll find out, obviously, as time goes on. But, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty the end of an era, really, in terms of of pitchers, because it's really him and Verlander. And, again, Verlander's been bouncing around from team to team. And to do it for 18 seasons. The way the pitchers are right now, it's hard to think that starting pitchers can last 18 years.
Yeah, it is, and just especially with the way the game has changed with the pitch clock and stuff. It's definitely a different game than maybe what it was 5 or 10 years ago, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And speaking of, it's a retirement or departures, if you will. It's more on the sports media realm
and broadcasting. Yeah,
yeah. So Molly Qerim, the longtime host of ESPN's First Take, announced on her own that she will be leaving ESPN, and of course, presumably that also means ESPN First Take. And she announced it quite abruptly. It wasn't really a long, drawn out announcement. It isn't really more so with weeks' notice. It just kind of happened. And my first reaction was I was really, really surprised. And the second thing I guess we'll say about it is I think ESPN just overall is going in a totally different direction. And this is another one of those situations where I can't fully figure out what ESPN is trying to give the consumer in 2025. And I'm not quite sure if you feel similarly, but I find myself, and we'll obviously get to it but just from a general ESPN standpoint, I find myself watching less ESPN programming and seeing more ESPN notifications than what it should be, which is the other way around. And unfortunately, I think her departure, all but ruins the any luster that ESPN First Take still had. And I don't know. I just think it was a bit of an awkward transition, and obviously, I'm happy for her that she's choosing to do what she wants to do. But overall, I just think it was a very, very odd, just a very odd, unexpected announcement. And I don't know. To me, and you could feel differently about this, but to me, I just didn't feel like there was a full closure as to what I would have maybe anticipated when the announcement first happened. So,
well, what's very strange about all this, and I think you're kind of echoing this too, is so it comes out. I see it from the media guys, like the Andrew Marchands and the sports business journals of the world. And originally, it had been reported that she was going to be leaving at the end of the year. But
yeah, that's what I saw too.
But then as the hours and the next day wore on, like Molly wasn't on ESPN the following day post this announcement. It wasn't on First Take following the announcement. And, Stephen A. actually is hosting that next day. I think this was last Wednesday, if I remember correctly, because I was off. And usually if I watch First Take, I usually watch it on Wednesdays because Mad Dog is on and they have the What Are You Mad About, which is probably the best segment of the entire show every week. But what's very strange about all this is so it gets reported that she's going to leave at the end of the year. And then it turns out that it actually, like you said, it was abrupt and that she left already. So It wasn't at the end of the year. And that's where it gets to be, well, what happened that she left as quick as she did? Like, was there maybe something that happened on the show, something with either management or, and we don't know this, but did something happen with, Stephen A. or somebody on the show? Maybe it was not even a network. Was it the show that forced her to go early? that obviously we don't know, and we may never know, but there has to be that you have to ask that question and have to wonder, because it was originally reported she was going to leave at year's end, and then it turns out she left, that she's actually not coming back at all already. And I know Stephen A's hosted for a couple of days. On Monday, they had Amina Smith on, and I actually, when I got off of work on Monday, I actually decided to put First Take on. I DVR'd it, and I watched it, and I got to tell you, they miss Molly already. I could tell you, I don't know who they could put in her shoes to fill in that's going to be able to moderate a show like that with, because Orlovsky and Dan Orlovsky was on Mondays like he usually is, and him and Stephen A must have had a 20-minute back and forth banter with nobody stepping in. And Cam Newton was on too, and like nobody stepped in to try and stop that continuing to happen. And I watched it, and I kind of cringed, and I'm like, this is the direction the show's going to be going in now, because they don't have a top-notch moderator like Molly. I'm like, this is not a good sign.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I'm sure ESPN executives were probably caught off guard, considering that, and I bet most of the higher-ups were already preparing for January 2026 and not expecting that she was just going to be gone like that.
And what ESPN also is doing is they're doing a 30 to 45 day tryout to find a new host.
Right.
And here's the thing too with this also, if you want to think about it from a sports perspective as well, Molly left in the heart of their season, which is football. First Take will talk 99% football, especially this time of the year. We have, obviously we're into the end of September. Right now, big part of college football, NFL, big college football time right now, and that's their peak content, and they don't have a regular host for that peak content.
No, they don't.
This had happened, let's say, Zan, this happened like June or July, they could get away with it because there's not a whole lot happening. They're not going to talk about Major League Baseball day in and day out.
Right.
The big things that ESPN right now is talking about is NFL, college football, and WWE, since they picked up WWE to do it. You're talking about that WrestlePalooza that happened this past weekend. Yep. They were talking about that a lot. So this is their peak time of the year when it comes to talking sports. They could have gotten by with this in the summer when a lot of people are, traveling on vacations. It's a very slow time of the year. But now you're in your peak time of the year and you don't have a regular host. It doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't look good at all. And kind of what I was alluding to at the beginning of this. Like I see more ESPN stuff on social media than I do where I actually sit down and have the time to watch the programming, because, and this is unfortunate to say because they are the number one sports network on the planet, but to me, they need to go back to what made even great, which was really, really unique content. And I don't simply think that they have it right now. Oh, and they need to make some serious changes. I mean, obviously, I think the McAfee show was a nice touch. I think he's really entertaining, but outside of that, and I don't know how you feel about your regular ESPN programming consumption, but I don't think the network was what it once was 5-6 years ago.
Oh, it's not even close. I mean, I grew up, even the early 2000s, Around the Horn, Pardon the Interruption, into Sports Center. I used to always grow up thinking about the 5, 6, and 11 p.m. Sports Centers and the replays in the morning. That's not there anymore. Around the Horn is no longer there. Pardon the Interruption is still around, and they did extend Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser, so that show will continue to go for a few more years.
I like that show a lot.
It's the best. It really is. And I know that some other networks try to do some shows similar to that, but there's nothing like that, and there never will be. And I'm happy that at least that's still around. It makes me also really wonder, is First Take have a future, like as a show, or do they have to rebrand this whole show because like Molly's gone? And dare I say, do they make it like, even though Stephen A has his own show on Sirius XM, amongst other things, is Stephen A become the host of this and they rebrand this show?
Yeah, I don't know.
And again, this is in the heart of the season. If this is in the summertime, they have some time to figure this out. They can get by with interim host. This is happening now in the peak of their content, NFL, college football. I don't know. It's going to be a tough look. Molly, I liked a lot. I thought she handled everything really, really well. She could actually, moderate a debate. She had some humor. She always loved like the "What are you mad about" segments. So yeah, this is a big loss for sure. And I don't know where her future is. I don't know what the future of this show is, but they've got to think of something fast, and that's why they're doing that 30 to 45 day tryout, because I think they realize that right now in the heart of the season before the holidays happen, this is their peak time of the year.
Yeah, and more the thing before we wrap the show for this evening, and who knows, maybe that 30 to 45 day tryout happens and they find someone and that person maybe doesn't do super well in the role and they have to redo this all over again. You never know. So
yeah, it's funny because I was trying to think because I love talking media people and stuff. I'm trying to think of somebody off the top of my head who I think could do that. And I mean, I know they've had some fill-ins, like when Molly's been on vacation and stuff, like Shea Cornette or Christine Williamson. I don't know about them as an everyday host. Christine Williamson does the social stuff for game day. They do a show before game day on Saturdays, and Shea Cornette could be that person, but then you have to reshape your Sports Center stuff. They might be going outside the box here to try and find a host.
yeah, that definitely seems like it's a possibility for sure. Because I can't think of anyone off the top of my head that's currently with ESPN that could fit that hosting role. I think of someone later, I'll mention it on a future episode. But to me, besides those two names, I can't think of anybody else either.
Matt Barry could be that guy, but you're not taking Matt Barry off of College Football Final and Sports Center, and when he does the Thursday night college football games, you're not taking him off of that. So
you're not taking him off about always college football either.
You're not. No, absolutely. And Barry, he's awesome, by the way. So I don't know where they go. They're going to have to think outside the box here for this, but that's why those tryouts are going to happen. But 30 to 45 days, you know what? That takes you into November, and then. You know when's it happening? Thanksgiving break, and then you come back, Christmas break.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. And then before you know it, it's 2026. So
yep,
there you go.
Not trying to rush time, but it's happening on its own.
No, for sure. Well, that's going to do it for ETB Sports episode 289. I'm Zain Bando. He's Johnny Montalbano. Just a few quick reminders. You can listen to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network and his show ETB Sports wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. And of course, if we can't listen to us, you can watch us over at youtube.com/ETB Network. Again, just as a final reminder to please be sure to like and subscribe for everybody here at ETB. And I'm Zain. He's Johnny. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy all of the football that's coming up this weekend and so much more. And I will be back with Nick Morgasen next week. So we'll see you guys soon. Have a good one.
We'll see ya.